Good evening. It is episode 23 of the Blood Brothers podcast. Usually Sean does the introduction, but he is sadly not here due to internet, well, not having the internet, which has gone so smoothly. I'm joined by regular Rob Parker.
Hello there.
And not regular, but very, very special, SJ Watson.
Hello.
How are you? Sean usually lists off books and stuff, and I've got all the information here. So I'll say this before I go to sleep. Second Life and most recently Final Cut.
Yep.
Which I've got here.
Yep.
Awesome.
I'm sure most people that listen to this probably have it, as it was one of the big titles that came out a few weeks ago. But if they haven't, and they're foolish enough not to have, please can you give us a little rundown of what it's about?
Oh gosh. I should be able to, I ought to be able to do this, oughtn't I, without even really thinking about it. Yeah. So it's about a young, ambitious documentary filmmaker who travels to a fishing village in the north of England to make a film which is supposedly based around people's everyday sort of ordinary lives and using the footage that they've recorded themselves and submitted. But she gets there and realizes or discovers that there have been a few instances of young girls going missing, and one who 10 years previously apparently took her own life, although many people in the village seem to believe it may have been murder. And so she kind of gets drawn into an investigation, and we quickly realise that she has more. I was going to say more skin in the game. Is that the right?
Yeah, I love that expression.
Does that phrase work? Yeah, she has more going on, more links, I suppose, with this fictional fishing village, or with this fishing village. It's not fictional to her, is it? She's there. Than she may have realised herself. So yeah. Does that make sense?
It definitely does. Yeah, I thought you did a really good job of condensing it without spoiling anything there as well. Because the last thing you want with this book is to have anything spoiled for you. And
it's actually really difficult. I've realised in doing stuff like this, because I've like the first twist, or reveal, or whatever you want to call it, kind of happens fairly early on. So actually, there's not very much of the book I can talk about. Anyway, so yeah, but
I'm delighted because that's this is absolute the customary nonsense that I'm known for bringing to this conversation. But that expression "skin in the game," I love that. You're the only person I know that I've ever come across saying it. In my last book, we had to do a search for that phrase, and 5 people said it in the book. Everyone had skin in the game in the book.
Does it mean what I think it means, though? Does it mean it's more involved than they realise?
Yeah, like they've got much more to lose. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. I bet there's a really good, origin story to that phrase.
Yeah,
about having skin in the game, where someone was playing poker and had no money left and actually used skin to, maybe, I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm actually listening to it at the moment on audiobook.
Literally right now.
Not right now. This is not why my earphones are in. But it's an ensemble cast in the audiobook as well. For all the various different. It's brilliant. Yeah. It's great. So immersive.
Yeah. Oh, that's good, because I haven't actually heard it. So I obviously know that they've got a few different people, because they sent me voice samples and asked me who I liked, which voices I liked. So I knew they were sort of casting different. The different voices in the book with different actors. But yeah, I haven't heard it, so I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Oh no, it's really immersive, and because of that, you feel like you're getting a very complete experience as well. Yeah. And the central performance is excellent too.
Well, good, excellent. That's good. Can I just say, if you hear any strange noises, it's because my dog, who's usually really, really quiet through all these things, has decided that the sofa is haunted. So she's staring. I don't know what she's doing. Something odd is going on in her head, so we'll see. Yeah.
Is the sofa haunted?
Noises. I'm not torturing a
relative. I was going to building on sort of what Rob said, where it's immersive. It comes across that way in just in text. Like you feel like you're in this little village, and the people. I mean, people often talk about the characters or the thing that lingers, and it feels very much like little small town mentality almost.
Yeah,
where everyone knows everything.
Yeah, no, that was. I'm glad you said that, because that was definitely something I was hoping to achieve with this book. Because I've always loved those books where the place feels like another character, or feels like it could be anywhere else. And I really wanted to kind of try and create that atmosphere, which is one of the reasons I made it a fictional place. It doesn't actually exist. But yeah, because I definitely, I've always loved those like books like Rebecca and stuff, where the setting is so evocative that you can't really imagine it being set anywhere else. So it was really pleasing, actually, because when my editor read the book for the first time, she said that she wanted to get on a train and go up to Blackwood Bay, and then realised that she couldn't. Which is a nice kind of, that was a nice endorsement.
Yeah, that's like when you've got it right, is if you've completely fooled someone to research it on public transport.
Yeah, oh yeah, it almost does exist though, because it's quite heavily based on a real place.
Yes, well, I was going to ask, what would you mind, or do you want to keep that in your?
No, I'm that's why I'm happy to talk about it. No, it was inspired by, it's quite heavily based on a place called Robin Hood's Bay, which is in North Yorkshire. And I think I first went there towards the end of sort of probably 98, 99, I think. I was definitely there in 99 because I was there for Millennium. But anyway, I went there and I was so struck by it. It's a really strange place because there are hardly any cars, because it's very, very steep. It's kind of built nestled in the side of the cliffs, really, in a way. So cars can get down there, but there's nowhere to park down there even when they do. So there are just no cars, basically, and it's kind of got this one main road which is very steep, as I say, and then off it are all these kind of basically footpaths and alleyways, ginnels, I think they call them up there, don't they? It's such a weird place to explore, because you kind of head up one of these alleyways and you don't know if it's going to end in a group of cottages or a church or a graveyard or a dead end, and I think I was so struck by that, the feel of it being very sort of mysterious and kind of. And there were also these kind of rumours and stories about how smugglers used to land their contraband at the beach or whatever, and then they could get it up to cliff level without it seeing the light of day. So there were all these network of tunnels underneath between linking the cellars of the houses and stuff. And the metaphor there is fairly obvious, but buried secrets and stuff. But it really stuck with me. So even though the first time I went there was kind of 10 years before I had a book published, I think subconsciously I always wanted to set a book there. So I actually mirrored it. On the right and Robin Hood's Bay is on the left in Blackwood Bay, but basically it's the same place essentially, with a little bit of St Ives thrown in. So yeah.
Cool, very cool.
Have you been back since you were young, or is it like did you go back to research it and sort of get the feel of it again?
I went there a couple of years ago. Spent a bit of time there. It was really weird. It wasn't really weird, but it's kind of fairly weird, because I realised that every time I went there before, I was going in winter. It was kind of, for some reason, I just got in the habit of it felt like a wintry place. And I went there in summer. It was not completely different, but it felt like it had a very different feel to it. It's quite interesting. But yeah, I went back and sort of did a bit of research on the lowdown. Sort of just like around a notebook and a camera, but I did chat to people as well. But yeah, I told them what I was doing. I wasn't completely. Yeah. I hope they let me back now, though. I mean, I'm very clear in the back of the book. There's a little author's note saying that it's definitely not set in Robin Hood's Bay, because the people there are lovely.
Yes.
And as you gather, or as you know, that there aren't many people in the book that are that nice. So.
Well, there's definitely not many people in there who don't have something they'd rather be hidden, or there's something that they're rather to keep a secret.
We all got secrets, really, though.
Of course we do. I like that idea, that because my general rule of thumb is that if I feel that I might be derogatory about a place, I'll change its name and make it fictional. But if I'm going to be glowing about it, it's fine, we can keep it. And that applies to everything, like even down to streets, and built and houses. They might not be. So I play, but I know just what you mean.
Well, I have kind of completely blown it, because I remember as I was writing the book, I was thinking I'll never tell anyone it's based in Robin Hood's, and people might guess, but I'll just deny it, or I'll just say, apparently, as soon as the first time I was asked, well, is it set in a real place? I was like, no, but it's kind of based on Robin Hood's place. So I've kind of blown that, but yeah.
But it's a uniquely coastal English setting as well, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and that's I could immediately relate to that totally. Having you know, I mean, like grown up in places like Great Yarmouth and stuff like that. You know, like there's all those, you know, where the arcades are never far away from the chip shops and all that kind of stuff, and you can hear the seagulls while you're having, you know, you've got the sand on your toes, that kind of stuff. Like, all immediately relatable.
Yeah, and I think as well for me, because I was born, you know, in the Midlands, which is, you know, obviously pretty much as far away from the sea as you can get. So I only saw the sea twice a year on sort of summer holidays and whatever. So I think the sea has always had this kind of this draw for me that it's always felt very sort of evocative and kind of, yeah. And I think with the first two books, in a way, they could be set anywhere because they were very, very much kind of thrillers set within the home, I suppose. And so it didn't really make that much difference whether the home was in you know, France, or it could have been anywhere basically. And I kind of wanted, yeah, as I say, this to be a different thing. So yeah,
that's really good. With the characters, I mean, not I guess in this book, but generally, how do you go about creating? I mean, like the main characters, but also those little characters that pop up around the town are so like will stick in your memory. Do you spend like a good amount of time thinking about that, or do you just kind of write it and see how they come out?
It's a bit of both, really. With the main characters, yeah, I spend a bit of time. I find that I spend a bit of time thinking about them and sort of. It's funny because like with this book, actually with all of them, yeah, I've never been one for kind of like writing CVs down and like a lot of the tricks that lots of people say that they do. It's sort of felt a bit more organic than that, but I need to kind of understand kind of their sort of motivation or their sort of default setting, I suppose, if that makes sense. And in lots of, you know, yeah, with Final Cut, that kind of didn't really happen until the writing stage. I need to know enough to begin to write, and then it's usually as I write that I don't know what the dog's doing. He's barking at nothing, like an empty space. If I was superstitious, I'd be quite worried. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, I think it's kind of it's understand their outlook on life, I suppose, and their kind of the thing that they want from life. Really,
that's so interesting because so you take it back to a very base state, like just and then build the character from there. That's so interesting and inspiring. Actually, I've never heard of that quest to build a character done like that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's because, and this is something I've only come to like over the years, but I think a lot of the time you read people's advice about building character, or you read articles about it, and they're talking about, well, you need to know what kind of shoes they wear and what, you know, whether they went to school here or went to school there, and you need, and yes, you kind of do, but actually, it's not just kind of. I don't think a character for me, and it doesn't really feel real if I start with a list of, you know, obviously kind of how old they are. That's all kind of, you know. But it's more from what's within, because obviously the person you are within and your outlook and your belief system is what then informs what kind of shoes you wear and what kind of job you do and what kind of, you know. So I think it's about like going right in and then building everything out from that. And it's really interesting because especially with the book I'm writing at the moment, when I downloaded a question, I think it was from Faber, and the Faber Academy put out these sort of newsletters and blog posts and so on. And there was a really good, really kind of comprehensive character questionnaire. And a lot of that was about, you know, what's their star sign and I can't remember what they were all, things like that. But because I'd already done the character work to understand their interiority, it actually felt like I was just filling stuff in that I already knew. I didn't feel like I was making any stuff up because, you know, I do think, you know, you can't really write until a character feels real to you and you kind of feel that you would understand who they are and how they would react to any situation. So so that's the kind of work I do try and do first.
That's really interesting. I like that. How do you? So you say you sort of think about the character. Do you plan a lot? I guess. I mean, thinking about Final Cut, it's like sort of now and then, now and then.
Mm.
Does that obviously takes quite a lot of planning, or do you kind of go with it?
Yeah, it's funny because with each book I've planned more. I used to think of myself as a what do they call it, a pantser.
Yeah,
You know, I've always kind of loved the idea. You hear these people talk about how they kind of get the glimmer of an idea or an image or a line of dialogue, and they just spin a whole book out from that. And I've always loved the idea, probably because I'm lazy. I've always loved the idea of that. And Before I Go to Sleep kind of did happen like that in a way. I sort of did have a mental image of a woman looking in a mirror and blah, blah, blah. Sorry, I shouldn't say blah, blah, blah in case anyone hasn't read it. Someone looking in the mirror and seeing someone who's, 20 years older than they were expecting. And I kind of then did just start writing, and it sort of, it worked. But I realized that was a bit of a fluke, actually. And with each book, I've planned it more and more. So I do need to leave a bit of space around the plan, though, if that makes sense, so that for things that happen that are unexpected, or I can't. I think if I was to plan everything to a huge amount of detail, I don't think I'd really be bothered to write the book, because it would feel a bit like, what's the point now? I know the story.
While you've mentioned Before I Go to Sleep, I mean, can we just talk about that for a moment? Would that be all right? I mean, yeah. I bet you sick to the back teeth of talking about it, to be honest. But never.
Bought with his house, so I mean,
well, yeah. Because that is, talking about a behemoth, I mean, that just blossomed, took off, exploded. Hollywood movie, you name it. That book did it. How was that journey? I know it must be very hard to condense that into an answer, but I mean, it's every writer's dream in a lot of ways.
Exactly, yeah, it's exactly that. It's that kind of. I remember when I think it was probably when I got accepted on the Faber course that I did. I remember chatting to my then partner and saying something like, obviously in an ideal world, I'm going to do this course and they're going to love the book, and I'm going to find an agent and she's going to sell it around the world, and it's going to go to #1 and there's going to be a film made of it. But that felt like a pure. I mean, it felt as ridiculous as me sitting there and saying, well, obviously in an ideal world, I'm going to win the lottery. It's something that you kind of don't actually think would happen or could happen. But it's kind of what happened. I mean, it sort of, and it was fairly, it's kind of weird because it happens, I suppose, unlike winning the lottery, where you go from, oh, I've got a ticket in front of me, to, oh my God, I've got all 6 numbers, whatever it is. It's a more gradual process. So it felt like a series of kind of hurdles that I would clear. But it was very, very surreal. I mean, it's funny because, like, I'm not, by nature, I'm not really a kind of punch the air kind of guy. I'm very British and very reserved in my kind of, that's so yeah. I don't know what Claire actually thought, to be honest, because like she would ring me and she'd say, we've just sold it to, I don't know, Uzbekistan or something, I don't know, but language, and I'd be like, okay, that's good. And she'd be like, this is amazing, Steve, and I'd be like, yeah, I know, yeah, it's good, isn't it? Good. And I think she was expecting me to faint or to, I don't know who. But I kind of kept all that sort of stuff in, and even when the film deal was struck, and even when Liza, the producer, was ringing me and saying, oh, Nicole Kidman's agreed to play the part.
Good grief, I mean.
Yeah, and I'd be like, oh, okay, that's good. And she was a bit like, why isn't he excited?
do you go kind of numb, Steve? Is that what happens? Like, because I know whenever I get a sliver of good news, I kind of go numb with it. Like, if if my wife says it's like, right, we're going to have Rogan Josh for tea, I go numb for a little bit with excitement. Like, yes, wow.
That I would lose my shit over if someone dude I like. I'd be like, oh my God, yeah. But like Hollywood film deal, I'm like, yeah. Right.
Just a regular Tuesday.
Yeah. I think it's kind of a weird sort of, I don't know. I think I'd heard so many stories about films that almost get made and then don't, or for whatever reason, because somebody or other decides they don't want to do it anymore or whatever. I remember I always said to myself, when Nicole Kidman is there on the set and there's film in the camera, and even then, you know, I thought, well, it might never get a distributor. Something might happen. So I don't think I'm a pessimistic person by nature, but I suppose it's that kind of self-preservation thing. I'm not going to sort of like, I'm not going to throw a huge party until it's till it's kind of in the can. But I do remember when the film was done, the very first time I watched it was at a cinema in, I don't know, West London, I think. But it was a test screen of a fairly early, I was going to say draft. It's not called a draft.
Is it a cut? Yeah.
A fairly early cut.
Assembly?
Yeah, whatever. A fairly early version, yeah. And I remember I was sat there, and in front of me was Rowan, who'd written it and directed it, so kind of his film, and Liza, her film too, because she'd produced it. So they were the two people who made this film. And the final scene of Before I Go to Sleep, I mean, I remember when I wrote it, I cried, and I remember every time I edited it, I cried. So it obviously comes from a very, and I don't really quite understand it, but it comes from a very deep place, and it kind of obviously speaks to me on a sort of very deep level. So when I saw it on the screen, I remember all this emotion that I'd kind of slightly kept in and sort of down and not got, it all erupted in one go, and I just burst into tears. And I don't even mean, it wasn't like a sort of like wiping away, you know, it was like floods of tears, of just overwhelmed with I suppose all that had happened to me over the preceding, I don't know, what would it be, 2-3 years. And but Rowan said he looked around because prior to that he'd done Brighton Rock, and he'd done another film, but I think, but he said to me that I was my book was the first thing he'd adapted by a living author. So, you know, he said my opinion was really important to him. And he said he looked around and he just saw me crying. and he leant over to Liza and he said, apparently, this is either really, really good or really, really bad. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
They're butchering it up there. That's the risk.
Yeah, I hate it. Yeah. No, I didn't know. It was like an incredible thing, yeah. It was a really surreal thing, yeah. My whole life turned upside down. I went from being one version of me to I had to be a different version of me. So yeah, it's a weird thing, but it's the dream as well. So I'm not going to complain.
No, of course. Did you get much input into the filmmaking process at all, or was it, you know, did they take your source material and just run with it?
Well, that really, they took it and did the thing. But I mean, that was actually what I wanted in a way. Well, it was what I wanted, because I'd heard stories about authors who'd sort of got a bit too involved and a bit too much skin in the game, you know, and they sort of ruined it.
Yes.
And I thought, actually, this is an incredible thing. And I'm not a filmmaker, you know, I'm not that. And I don't know how to tell a story visually in that way, you know. I'm not even a particularly sophisticated viewer of films. I love film and TV, and I sit there watching it, but I don't analyze it or try and understand why that's worked or why that hasn't. So I thought, you know, I'm not going to start throwing my weight around and say, well, actually, I don't think Nicole Kidman is right for this part, you know. Obviously. And I mean, and also the nature of the contract assignment, I didn't have a say in anything anyway. So,
right.
You know, but having said that, I was very lucky because Rowan and Liza were both, well, first of all, because it was they were based in Britain, in the UK, and it was shot in the UK. So it wasn't like they weren't over there in LA while I was over here, you know. So I was physically close to the production, but also they were very sort of, they wanted my input. They were asking me, they were checking things out with me, you know, they were making sure I was happy. But I made the decision that if there's anything that I really, really thought was a bad idea, I would have voiced that and sort of fought a battle. Not battle, but, you know, I would have fought my corner. But there was nothing that they wanted to do that I didn't really agree with. So I just sort of like said, okay, you go and make the film. And that meant that I could just kind of enjoy the process, and I could turn up on set and just enjoy it rather than have to be thinking, oh, is that the right shade of blue for the carpet? I'm really not sure about it. I just literally sat there like, I think the first time I was on set, I think a lot of the people working on the film were a bit kind of, well, the author's in today, so we have to be, you know, be nice to him and be on good behaviour. But by the time I'd been there for like the 95th time I turned up, it wasn't quite that many, but you know, I think it was, oh, he's here again, you know. Just there to sort of enjoy it and make. I suppose because I thought this may well never happen again. So and it's something I never thought would happen. I thought the nearest I would ever get to being on a film set was the DVD extras on the Lord of the Rings. So it's kind of bizarre, yeah.
Are you on extras on Lord of the Rings, or is that?
No, I mean watching it. I mean,
all right. I thought there was another story.
I was like,
I remember when I suppose it must have been when I bought the Return of the King DVD, perhaps, whatever. And I was ill, so I sat and watched most of the 87 hours worth of DVD extras. And then I do remember watching them making it on location in New Zealand, I suppose it must have been, and sort of thinking, oh, that looks like such fun to be in a film set. And at the time I was working in a hospital, and lots of good things about that job, but fun wasn't really that high on the list of things that I want to work for, and I was thinking, I bet that's amazing to be on a film set, but but that isn't the direction my life took. So I'll turn up to the hospital again tomorrow and do my thing. So that's why I thought I would never be nearer to a film set than being on the Lord. No, I wasn't actually Lord of the Rings.
It's a shame. What were the main cast like? Really pretty? Like, did you get to hang out with them a bit?
I wouldn't say hang out. I met them though. It was really, again, it was so surreal. I was sitting there because I don't, you probably realise a film set is actually quite a boring place. Most of the time, you're sat there waiting for something to happen, whether someone's fixing the lights or making sure that, I don't know what they're doing, but something is happening over there somewhere, and you're kind of like. So I was there looking at my phone, probably playing a game or texting somebody or something. And I feel this tap on my shoulder, and I look up, and it's Liza, the producer, saying, "Oh, can I just introduce you to Nicole?" And I was like, and there was Nicole Kidman stood in front of me, in the full wig and costume, ready to go and do a take. And I was like, "Oh my god, this is like." I mean, I can't even describe it. A character that started off in my head.
Yeah, it's standing in front of you.
Not only stood in front of me, but stood in front of me with an Australian accent, and it's Nicole Kidman. It was like, this is like so surreal. So, but we chatted. It was she's really, she's Nicole Kidman, but she's really lovely and actually very nice, and sort of and the same with all of them, really. I mean, it was interesting because I was also on set when they shot the fight scene from towards the end of the film, and that was in a different studio. It was a much smaller thing, so there were only like, I don't know, a dozen people there in total. The set was much smaller, and everything was just much more relaxed. And I remember I said to Nicole. I said,
you can say that, mate. You're fine to say that. Yeah.
Wanky, though. I said to Nick, there was me. I was hanging out with Colin. Me and Colin were there. And they came along. Yeah, she got some Monster Munch. Anyway, I feel it's kind of hard work, because it looked like hard work because it's quite physical. But it's quite interesting because she said the opposite. So this is actually, it's just technical. It's just, I've got to fall here. I've got to go this way. The camera's over there, so I do this. And I don't actually have to act at all. So I think because of that, everyone was just much more relaxed. And it was really, we just like ended up chatting about, I don't even know what, just like random stuff, which is kind of really lovely thing, because, it must be really weird being that famous. I don't even know what it's like. I mean, obviously it comes with some advantages, but there's also not being able to walk down the street without someone having an opinion about what you're wearing or what you've said or what you're, it's must be really, really odd.
The Nicole Kidman level of fame is a serious level of fame. I mean, that's like pop culture iconography, isn't it? I mean, everyone knows who that person is.
Yeah,
all three of them, because Colin Firth is obviously Colin Firth, but Mark Strong was massive for a while.
Yeah. And also, let's not forget, I mean, she's not in the film for that much, but Anne-Marie Duff was also, I mean, she was great. I remember.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I didn't really spend a lot of time with her because I was only on set with her. And in fact, I think it was when she was in for a meeting or rehearsal. Anyway, whatever. But she was lovely as well. She was very sort of, again, just very down to it. They're just people doing a job at the end of the day, like any of us. And I think it's all the stuff that surrounds them that ends up being kind of I don't know, kind of been making it difficult for them to have a normal life because they're just surrounded by so much.
Yeah.
And other people who are kind of managing this, that, and the other. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I never thought I would be in a situation where I was having a chat with Nicole Kidman either.
Yeah.
You know, let alone
very, very
a character I'd invented. So it's very odd.
I watched it again last night.
Yeah.
It's really stands the test of time, and also, and not that it's that old really, but your book as well. Your book came out in 2011, is that right? Which is, I finished uni in 2010, and I kind of went through a bit of a 3 or 4 year reading slump, and it was one of the first books that I read when I sort of decided I'm going to start getting into reading again, and I really, really remember it. So it's like one of the books that in my life that sort of made me love reading again. So
that's good. That's a lovely thing to hear. You know, I know what you mean about reading slumps, and sometimes you can go through a period of time, can't you, where you just think, I can't be bothered, and then if you read a book that, I mean, it's so lovely. I mean, someone said to me once that they didn't really think of themselves as a reader at all, but then they'd read my book and thought, oh, actually, I do enjoy reading, and then since then they'd read lots of other stuff. So, and that was like, that's such an amazing feeling to have opened someone's eyes to the world of books and the world of fiction. So yeah, but I'm glad that's a lovely thing to say.
Yeah, so thank you. This is a bit surreal. So you mentioned working in a hospital, is that right?
Yeah.
And when did you how did you get into writing? Was it always something you wanted to do and sort of put on the back burner?
Yeah, absolutely, exactly that. I mean, I remember when I was at school and people would say, you know, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? And I would always say, I want to write novels. It was always there as sort of what I wanted to do. But then I kind of decided, I suppose, at some point that I should be a bit more sensible and have a proper job, you know, because everything that you hear about, you know, how hard it is to get a novel published, and even when you get a novel published, how hard it is to make money from it, you know, and all those things are true, you know. So I suppose, and also I think my natural kind of state has always been slightly conservative with a small c, in terms of let's not do anything hasty, let's not do anything like risky, let's just make sure we've got all of our. So I kind of proceeded on this sensible career path. I did physics at university, and then wasn't absolutely sure what I wanted to do with that, but I ended up training to be an audiologist, so working with hearing impaired children. In my case, I ended up specializing in pediatrics. But the writing was always kind of there. It was always there as something which I did, and there were some periods where I wrote a bit, some where I didn't write some periods where I didn't write very much at all. But it was always kind of there. There is one day I'm going to go back to this, and and then sort of towards, I don't know, the mid to late, like 2007, 2008 probably would have been. I sort of was getting more and more senior in my NHS career and just not really enjoying it. I'd always loved seeing the patients, but then kind of the other stuff that goes on around that became more and more. I mean, looking back now, it's not really what I enjoy. You know, I was kind of faking it in a way. I'm talking about the sort of meetings about, let's have a meeting about finance and about. I just wasn't really. And of course, you know, as like with lots of jobs, as you get more and more senior in it, you end up spending more and more time talking to managers and trying to fight or for this, that, or the other, and less time with the patient or with the person, the reasons you originally, you know, the original motivations for doing the job. So anyway, and so I just had this really strong sense that I wasn't doing what I wanted to do with my life. And I remember a kind of a very clear moment actually where I just thought, well, I always wanted to be a novelist, but I blew that, didn't I? And then I just thought, well, why did I? I mean, I still could. Because I mean, being a novelist it's not like, I don't know, it's not like being like lots of things, whether they're creative or not, like being a doctor. You know, if I decided I wanted to be a doctor, like a surgeon, for example, I probably had blown it because I would have been too old to have done all of that. or being a pilot, things like that.
There are lots of ways to blow it pretty bad in those two jobs as well. Like career terminus.
You can write your debut novel at 20. You can write your debut novel at 70. It doesn't really make any difference. So I just thought, well, actually, and it was a really strong feeling of I don't want to get towards the end of my life and look back and go, I never really tried. I spent my whole life wanting to be a novelist, and I never really tried. So I said to myself, I'm going to have to, I need to give it a proper go. I need to really try, not dabble, not talk about it like lots of people do, talk endlessly about writing, but not actually doing anything. I need to really, and make some sacrifices. If I haven't got time to write, which I didn't have because I was so busy at work, I need to create time. And then if I'm on my deathbed, and I can look back and go, I had a go, I failed, but I had a go. Then I can live with that, But so that's really what my thought process was. So I thought, well, so I went part-time at work. I remember I went to see my boss. When I tell this story, I'd like to say I went to see my boss and he said I couldn't go part-time, so I flounced out and went, well, I'm leaving then. That isn't what I went to my boss and said I'd like to go part-time, and he said, oh, it's a full-time job, so you can't. And I was like, oh, okay. But I sort of went and I saw another job was advertised in the same field and in London as well. So I applied for that. It was part-time, much more junior. But I also thought, well, that's a good thing too, because I won't be having to do all these rubbish meetings I don't want to do. I can sort of just do the day job, if you like. And so so I went part-time at work, started writing, and and coincidentally, well, I didn't want to say that, but absolutely, the rest is history.
No, I must be so happy with that though, because there are so many people who don't take the bull by the horns like that and fashion those chances for themselves. Like you mentioned, a lot of people talk about writing. I think certainly on the school run is when I get people telling me the most that they also write novels, and then you get there, you say, "Oh, what have you done?" Because you just want to support people, don't you? And it's like, "Oh no, it's all up here." Like, oh, come on, because it might be amazing. It might be amazing. And you could go and do an SJ Watson and go and smash it out of the park on your first book and have a Hollywood movie. But, you're never going to do that unless you do what you did. And that's fashion it out of, you carve out those opportunities for yourself. I think that's hugely inspiring.
Yeah, that's what I always say when people say to me, well, I don't have time to write. I always say, well, you make a choice. If you choose to watch EastEnders or whatever, I don't want to single out EastEnders, but if you choose to watch TV, for example, I'm not saying that's a better or a worse thing. I'm not saying you shouldn't watch EastEnders. You should be writing up because that's what you want to do. But don't kid yourself that you don't have time. There is always something that could give. If you really, and I think that's what I decided. If I'm really serious about writing a book, then actually something has got to give. I can't just kind of shoehorn it into my life because that's not working. So so that's why I went part-time. And for that period of time when I was on the course as well, my friends would say to me, you're a part-timer now, aren't you? And kind of implying I'd got all this spare time. And I said, no, I'm not actually. I have 2 jobs. I did treat it as another job. Like 3 days a week at the hospital, and then, well, actually 4 days a week, not 2 days, but 4 days doing my other job, and that was a really healthy, for me anyway. That was a really healthy thing because it also meant that when my friends would say, "Oh, we're going out here on this night. Do you want to come? Or we're having a barbecue or a party, or whatever?" I'd go, "No," because I've got to work on chapter 97 of whatever, and people were very supportive. But it's about having the confidence to say, and I think this is something I passionately believe. You have to call yourself a writer before anybody else will. You don't become a writer when you're published. You don't become a writer when you write a bestseller. You become a writer when you put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard. And you have to take yourself seriously before anybody else will, I think. And that's why I often will say to people, if they are struggling, I say, you need to say to people, I can't do this thing, because I'm working. It's work. It's a if you're taking it seriously, it's a job. So that's kind of what I did. Well, it is what I did. Yeah, I can't remember.
That's great.
Yeah, I think that's like there are a number of nuggets from this that I will print on T-shirts for myself to get inspired by. Seriously, I think
it's just, I think it's about how important is this thing to you, you know. And a lot of those people say, well, I'd love to write a novel, but I can't because X, Y, and Z. What they're really saying is X, Y, and Z are more important than the novel. And that's fine, you know, because on the one, you know, the sort of extreme example, I can't because I've got kids. Well, yeah, I mean, your kids are important to you. So that's understandable if your kids are more important than writing a novel. But, you know, if it's EastEnders that's more important than writing a novel, then you've got to reassess whether you really want to do it.
Yeah. That's great advice.
So true.
Fast forward a little bit to 2011 and the CWA Daggers. You won the New Blood.
Yes.
And any good stories about your speech or anything? Mike Craven told us an embarrassing bit of his speech. Anything from the night that you remember?
Well, I want to know what Mike Craven's was, but no,
I can't remember what he said actually.
It was more born
I
out
didn't
of
thank anyone or something.
Yeah,
he
was
just
so
got up
surprised that he didn't really say anything as coherent as he'd like, and didn't thank anybody.
I don't think there are any good stories really, apart from I think I was up for 3 daggers, he said modestly that night. I was definitely up for a second. I think I was up for the Ian Fleming thriller. I think it's a thriller dagger as well. And I can't remember who it was, but it was a Steve somebody else that won that. Because my name is, as you know, is Steve. So, and I do. I mean, this isn't that good a story actually. It's a rubbish story. I'll start it now. Anyway, so sitting at the table, and so I'd already got my dagger, and it was there, proud in front of me. And my publicist, Alison, who's lovely, was sat next to me. And when they announced the winner of the Ian Fleming dagger, she leapt in the air, whooping when they got up to Steve, and then it was Steve. I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was, but sorry, it's not you, is it? Somebody else. So that was not that embarrassing, but. Yeah, I managed to not get too horribly drunk that night.
Good.
So purposefully?
Achievement.
Yeah.
I can't remember it, yeah.
I think if I was ever at one of those things, I'd be so giddy, I'd be out of control. I think.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of... It is, yeah. Again, it's that sort of surreal thing, and kind of sat around this table for, I think we've got 8 people around the table. I mean, I look up and Lee Child is sat opposite. It's kind of like that. Looking over there, and it's kind of, you know, Ian Rankin's over there, and Val McDermott is over there, and you think, oh my god, there are these. And to have then won as well. Well, I mean, obviously I wasn't up against them because it was a debut thing, but it's very strange.
Amazing.
And
then was Second Life came out in, was it 2014?
I think it was February 2015 actually.
Was it 2015? Forgive me.
So yeah.
How was the writing of that compared to the first time around? Did you feel pressure?
Yeah, I mean, again, I always remind myself that, you know, it's a luxury problem to have. You know, if you're going to have a problem, following up a worldwide best-selling novel that was turned into film with Nicole Kidman is a good one to have. The list of problems in your life. But it was interesting because I think it was Stephen King that said it, but I'm not absolutely sure. But I always loved that sort of image that you need to write the first draft with the door closed. You know, you need to write the first draft as if no one's going to read it. And you know, and I always say to debut novelists, people writing their first book, I always say, you know, that it may not feel it, but you're actually quite in a good position because you can write it as if no one's going to read it. I mean, the downside is the chances are that no one is, but you know, but actually it's a very freeing thing to do, isn't it? To sort of be able to just, and you know, and so when I came to sit and write Second Life, it was just incredibly difficult to kind of to try and get to that place of I'm writing this for me and it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, because I couldn't pretend, you know. I had an agent obviously who was going to read it, I had editors that were going to read it, I had and I don't know, 4 million people at that point have bought Before I Go to Sleep. And at least some of those people were also going to be interested in reading it. And so I couldn't, it was very difficult. I mean, I remember back then I used to read my Amazon reviews. I don't anymore. But, and I remember one person had sort of said that in Before I Go to Sleep, that something like the characters turn to each other so often that it's a wonder they're not dizzy. And I realized that phrase, he turned to her, she turned to him, it is one of my kind of go-to phrases. It's one of my crutch kind of phrases, you know, when it's like, when you're just thinking, I need to put something here, I'll put that in, and, you know. But I remember when I came to write Second Life, I was just kind of paralyzed. Every time I was about to type it, I was thinking of Mrs. Smith in Hartlepool, who thought that, you know, and it just was very kind of, that was the difficult thing with that book, was learning how to get back to that place where I'm doing it for me again, I suppose. Because, you know, again, this is going to make me sound like a dick probably, but like, nobody runs a course how to follow up a best-selling novel, or how to, there's lots of how to write a debut novel, but there's no one out there that will say, well, here's my advice. I mean, people, actually, I've said that, people were giving me advice, but it's just really, it's just kind of, again, it's a luxury problem, so I'm not complaining.
No, and I think
that is massive. Yeah.
Oh, it is. Are you okay, Chris? Sorry.
I'm not going from a microphone here.
In excitement and glee. Too much skin in the game, Chris. Can't remember what I was going to say now. It's gone.
Sorry,
man. No, don't be daft. I think it was, it was the novel writing process is so unique and personal in any case, you know, and you know, I feel like I do it different every time now, you know, so it's not like what I did last time with work this time, and I imagine that's true for so many writers as well.
Yeah, I think absolutely, and it's taken me. I mean, it took me 3 books to really, I think, really understand that. You know, I think with Before I Go to Sleep, because the way I wrote that worked so spectacularly well. I just thought, well, that's my method. That's obviously what I do, and so that's what I need to do for the second book, and it didn't work, and so I had to learn how. And I do really think that actually, you learn how to write the book you're writing, and then, you know, you pick up, obviously, some things are consistent. Like, I know that I'm a morning person when it comes to writing, at least. But there are certain, like the book I'm working on now, I've written by hand. I've written longhand.
Oh wow!
Which was not something I expected to happen. I just kind of gave it a go because I thought, well, I've not done this before, so let's see how that feels, and it worked really well. But I know now it's really important for me not to think, okay, that's what works for me. You know, that may not work for book 5.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that kind of learning process with each one, isn't it? Which is what I suppose that's kind of good in a way, because it's what keeps it exciting.
Yeah. I think we got that impression. We spoke to Anne Cleves last week, and that was definitely the impression we got there too. That there's no sort of finite way of going about it. You know, some things work one time, then don't work the next. And I think the topic of your book and the challenges you face as you pose yourself as an author, change things as well. You know, and throw up obstacles and make you rethink your approach. And it's a constant journey. I'm very part of at this point.
Yeah, which I think is it's partly why. I mean, I think I've realised as well about myself. I love learning stuff, and that's why I really enjoyed the Faber course that I did, because I felt like I was learning stuff, and not just stuff to do with writing, but, you know, just generally. I mean, that's what's great about writing, isn't it? You actually can read a non-fiction book and call it research. But actually, I love learning. So and that's why I'm always kind of constantly striving for, what can I do that's different? What can I do that I've not done before? That sort of feels like I'm working in a slightly different space.
Speaking of, what is there anything you can tell us about your forthcoming work?
No.
What you're working on at the moment? You can't say anything.
Well, no, it's still in that. I don't know if you have the same thing, but it feels like it's in that stage where it feels very sort of like delicate and again, without wanting to sound like a dick, but kind of I need to protect it from other people. I don't know. It's another psychological thriller.
Awesome.
But, hey, that's
lovely.
We'll call that an exclusive for the Blood Brothers podcast. We got it.
It's fun, like what you were saying there. That word "delicate" is really good because I'm at a bit of a crossroads where I've written 3 of the Eric Piper books, and that was kind of what came naturally to me. Like, I didn't really think about should I write this in this way or this way. I started writing, and that's what came out. And after 3, I find it really limiting writing in first person present. So I've kind of reached a bit where I think, do I write the 4th one in that, or do I come up with a different? Because I've got the kind of the crime, if you want, like the sort of plot, but I don't know whether to try writing it third person present, sort of more traditional, with a new character. And I started writing the first page today just to see what would come out. And it felt almost like cheating on her because I sort of went with this other person, and it's such a strange feeling. Like,
cheating, or did you feel?
Say again?
Was it good cheating though? Did it feel good? Because if it feels good, then do it. That's what I.
Yeah, it did. I sort of didn't get to the detective bit yet, but I was kind of thinking it's going to be someone else investigating this, and it felt like a sort of step forward almost.
Oh, this is
cool. I think that. I do think that's sort of what happens in a weird sort of way, though, isn't it? The book kind of leads you into itself, or it sort of leads the way. You trust it. I mean, I remember when I was first writing Final Cut. Originally, there were chapters from one of the other characters' point of view. I mean, I know I use a lot of. What's the word for it? There's a word for it, isn't there? Words aren't my medium. Epistolary form. So there's there's lots of emails in it. There are lots of like hospital reports, things like that in the book. So I've kind of given a bit of variety from that point of view. But originally there were whole chapters from one of the male characters' point of view. And I remember being at and talking about like protecting the work. But I remember being at an event. It must have been an event of Second Life, obviously. But I remember, and someone said to me, "Can you tell me a little bit about the new book?" And I said, "Yeah, it's got 2 voices. It's got a female character and a male character." And I said, but the female character, who is Alex, it turns out, keeps on tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "This is my book. Get rid of him." And that's actually what I did. Wow. And I should have listened to her back then, because it was obviously something I deep down I felt actually the male voice isn't necessary or isn't working. So, yeah.
So interested in that, and that again calls back to the strengths of character creation that you've obviously gone through as well, because if the characters are doing things that you didn't expect, you've obviously brought them to life so vividly that they've got their own ideas. And it comes back to motivation. What's their motivation? What is they want? Turns out Alex wanted the book for herself.
Get rid of him. My friends, when I was in the course at Faberman, my friends and I used to talk about our feral characters, our feral narrators. That's what we used to say. These kind of narrators who wouldn't do as they were told and wouldn't behave. It does sound a bit far-fetched, doesn't it? To think, but the book does almost sort of begin to feel like a collaboration between you and your characters, and it kind of, it's almost like, I mean, I don't ride horses, but I imagine it's like riding a horse. You want to take the horse over there, and the horse kind of will do what it's told, but it's kind of it's a symbiosis thing. And so if the horse wants to go over there, then you need to try and you can't just force it.
Yeah,
I hope that makes sense, but
definitely.
Yeah.
I love it.
Man, it's so, like, I love this every week where we talk to different people, and it's just I always come away with it thinking, like, I just want to go and write now.
Yeah.
It's such a cool feeling.
Well, exactly. And I'm exactly the same. That's why I love all this kind of stuff. And I when I go to festivals and things, and I actually get, and especially, and even when I do I do a bit of mentoring occasionally, and when I do teaching, which I do very occasionally, I sort of appear as a guest tutor, whatever. But I think I get as much out of it as the students do. Just because talking about writing, it can really sort of, it can be inspirational. Even if it's somebody, it's just kind of inspirational, isn't it? It's kind of
I think I've lost my brain. Literally did a blank, like a total blank. I'm so sorry.
It's gone.
It's gone. It's gone. It's like a whiteboard. It was like, it's just literally white. I've got no idea. Sean's going to have to do something with that. And I know because I've said that, he won't. Yeah. So you've got me floundering in dead air.
I should say something really good now so he doesn't edit it out.
No, I will ask, because it's all about a love of story, though, isn't it? You love stories and love being able to create your own stories. I think there's nothing more powerful in the planet than being able to create a story. And I mean, how many languages at most recent count, Steve? 42? Like the amount of people that have enjoyed your work is just, I mean, it's huge.
Yeah. Especially because it's like, I'm big in China.
That's incredible.
China. I'm like, this is so surreal. I mean, everything about it is kind of surreal. If I was to rewind, 11 years, because 11 years ago I was just writing the book before I go to sleep. If you'd have told me that I'd be sat here now, I'm in China.
Yeah.
In your face,
All the people you're keeping awake in China reading your book, I just find that amazing. And it comes from a love of stories.
Why China? I mean, I just don't really understand. You can't consciously think, I'm going to write a book that's going to be massive in China.
No,
I have no idea why.
But I mean, there's something integral about the way a story is told that is absolutely, it's like transcultural, isn't it? Sometimes a hook of a story, I think, is just, it's great, whatever language or medium it's told in. But this is the clumsiest segue ever, but what's your favourite book, Steve? Because I'm going from the position that, like, everyone, I mean, I love stories so much, and it all comes from, and you said you always wanted to write when you were younger as well. So what book would what is your favourite book?
Well, I mean, there have been a number of books along the way that have kind of been instrumental on my journey to being a writer to where I am now. I mean, one of them is actually The Lord of the Rings. I remember, although I don't write fantasy, I don't even read fantasy anymore, actually. But I remember reading that and thinking, that's what I want to do. That is what I want to do. Kind of move somebody in the way that book has just moved me and create that whole escape. And then I read The Handmaid's Tale, and I love everything Atwood does, or almost everything Atwood does. And that was a book that kind of helped to reconnect me with my original ambition. But the book I do keep on, and I actually read it fairly late in my reading life, fairly recently, was I think is the one I would have to still would say is my favorite, is Rebecca. Because I think, I mean, a lot of people say that, but I think it just has that sort of, for me, it's because I really hate that whole thing about literary fiction versus genre fiction.
Oh yeah.
And I just think it's just ridiculous, and so there is no reason at all why you can't have a book that's beautifully written and has amazing characters and says something about the way we live today or the way we lived 200 years ago or whatever, but also has a really good story and a good plot and is a page turner and entertains people. I never understood why people think you can't have it all, and that's what I try and do. That's why I aspire to do. Whether that, how near I get to it is up for debate, but that's what I'm aiming for. And I think Rebecca does that really well, because it's a psychological thriller, and yet it's also rightly called a classic. Yes. Because it's beautiful, but it's a psychological thriller, and so cool. It has iconic characters in it, and I just think it's a great book. So that's what I will go for today.
Awesome. A worthy answer.
Yeah, lovely. And what are you reading at the minute?
What am I reading? I'm reading a proof at the minute of a book that's coming out in next year, which is called it's called The Light. Oh God, I can't remember what it's called. This is awful. It's by Emma Stonex. I don't know how you pronounce her name. Stonex. Stonex.
Oh, I don't know. I'll do a bit of live Googling.
It's a debut, and it's called The Lamplighters, I think, something like that. The Lamplighters. It's very good. It's about 3 people who disappeared. It's based on a true story.
Wow.
It's fictionalized, but it's based on a true story. It's 3 people who disappeared from a lighthouse off the coast of Cornwall in the 70s and just vanished. And the door was locked. And I think the boat was there, and there were 3 people who disappeared, but there was a meal put out for 2 people. When they went there to pick them up, and they weren't there. The door was locked. They were vanished. There was a meal for 2 people. And I thought all the way through, and it's really, and again, it's actually a good example of it's kind of a mystery. It's a kind of locked room mystery, sort of, but it's really beautifully written. So yeah, I'm reading that at the moment.
I've got it here. Emma Stone X's The Lamplighters.
Yes. Okay.
So, that's a great name too.
Yeah.
That's a hugely marketed.
But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So that's what I'm reading.
What about you, Chris?
I'm reading Final Cut.
Awesome.
It's all right. I started reading it when I was on holiday, and then I've been writing this like little cozy mystery thing, and it's taken all of my time. So I'm not making. I was sort of, when you get so into it that usually I just write like for an hour a night and then read for an hour, and I've been so into it that I've been spending like late nights at it and stuff. So I finished it. So I'm sort of dedicating a week now to reading. So I'll get it finished hopefully tomorrow.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean it's incredible. Like you said, a story that sort of takes you to a place that, I mean, it doesn't exist, but I am there on the streets. I know what you talk about, like the steep hill down and the little things, the people. So yeah, I love it, and I think everyone should read it. So hopefully they do.
Yeah. What are you reading, Rob?
Well, I'm currently listening to Final Cut by Mr. SJ Watson. Yeah. But if I could echo that entirely, this is multi-layered, multi-stranded, and I love that you. I think I would go along exactly with what you said before, Steve, about it's okay to write something that's beautifully written and also has a really compelling story. So and mystery, and this has that in absolute spades. I'm hook, line, and sinker. I'm really enjoying it, and I've got, like you say, this will be done tomorrow as well. Can I also shout out a book that came out this week, because this was my book of the year last year, but it wasn't out until this year. This is the lovely man Gary Donnelly with Killing in Your Name. It came out from Alison and Busby on Thursday. I was lucky enough to read this a year ago, and it was so good. It was my book of last year, but I don't know whether I'm allowed to say that because it didn't actually get published last year. So do I make it the book of this year? But it's his finest work to date. And I think Donnelly, the writer, shines with his now customary poetic prose, sharp turn of phrase, incisive eye for detail, and keen social commentary. Donnelly, the storyteller, has gone to town. He's filled my head with dread, whipped up an atmosphere of such tangible horror, and delivered a superb, multi-layered, standout novel. And I think he's cemented himself as one of the most exciting post-Troubles voices you could hope to find. So this
Beautiful
book
words.
knocked me to pieces. So it's brilliant. Yeah,
I'm looking for. I bought it because I read the first one, Blood Will Be Born, a few weeks ago. So I sort of like the characters are still in my head, so I think that's going to be my next one. Neil Lancaster's came out as well, going back, and I think the first 2 have been great. So I'm looking forward to getting into that as well. I've read the first chapter on my Kindle, and it was very, very good. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Steve, at this point, we'd like to play a game. You said you don't read your own reviews, and we do a thing called One Star Superstar, where it's not one of yours. Don't worry. That was last week. It actually was, yeah. And I should say at this point that it's books that we love that people have a wrong opinion of. So, I mean, I thought your book was incredible, but somebody had a stupid opinion about it. As they do.
Oh my god.
Your own one. I'm in uncharted waters here, don't I?
This is shaky ground, Chris. I did this to Shari LaPena, and I embarrassed myself hugely because she asked, "Can I hear a 1-star review of mine?"
Yeah, I can't. But if you listen to the Anne Cleves episode, it's near the end. And don't hate me. We make it very clear that woman's an idiot.
Well, once someone
not Anne Cleves
on Facebook, and she'd just written, "This book is plagiarized from 50 First Dates," and she cut and pasted it literally about 50 times in this long Facebook message, just over and over again.
No way.
That was her review.
The Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah. which I actually hadn't seen at the time.
But I mean, they are very similar.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I mean, that's the level we're talking about.
Yeah, that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, so take it with a pinch of salt. This week's 1-star review is from Neil from 2006, and it's amazing film, rubbish book. Never thought that could happen. Imagine the film is the trailer for the book. The book is just the boring bits that are left. No character build-up, not really much excitement. It is, as it says, a government report. It made me feel like a mindless, reanimated corpse. Seriously, don't waste your money.
So 2006?
2006.
What, so we now have to know what that was for?
Yeah.
Which book? Yeah. So it's from a film. Well, there was a film of the book.
So big. I mean, the book must have been big as well if a film came from the book. So, sort of the film came out 2006. Is that about right?
16, I think. Yeah.
Oh, 2016.
2016. Massive film, massive Hollywood star in it. And I can give you an extra 1-star review if it would help.
Yes, please. Yes.
Clark Morton, clever but tedious. Okay, this is quite clever, but the basic problem is that the structure is that it's a series of interviews. So the story is told by lots of different people. Therefore, there is no actual main character. Therefore, it's not very involving. Therefore, it is, I'm afraid, quite tedious.
So the book came out in 2016, or the film came out in 2016?
I'm going to say the film came out around then, I think.
So the book was obviously middle of this decade just gone.
Yes.
Give or take.
Right.
And it's a series of interviews.
Yeah, so I think the book's written as a series of interviews. Someone else said that no one really had a voice, so everyone sounded the same on the page, from elderly Chinese people to hip Americans.
Right, I'm really floundering here.
Yeah, I am.
You've read one of his books recently.
Me have. Again, works with words. I have.
Yes, you have.
I've read one of his books recently.
Yeah, he tackled another sort of supernaturally thing. This one feature. Shall I give you a bigger clue?
Yeah, go for it.
This one that I'm talking about, the one this week, features the undead.
So World War Z?
Yes.
Oh, seriously? The Brad Pitt movie?
Yeah.
No way, Max Brooks, because I'm reading... I was reading Max Brooks's Devolution about, Yetis. Sasquatches in that part of the world, isn't it? Sasquatches taking apart a... got to get that, it's very important, Chris.
It's technically accurate, yeah. Steve doesn't look sold on the idea of Sasquatches being real.
No, Sasquatch is doing over an eco-living resort after a volcanic eruption. Don't laugh, Chris. It's amazing. It's
your phrase of
ace.
doing over sounds like Cockneys storming a place.
There's so much looting going on
in the game.
Yeah, they've got loads of skin in the game. And in fact, the movie rights have already been sold as well. So you're going to see it on a big screen as well. So hopefully, in fact, actually, it was written via a series of interviews as well. So, yeah. Another tedious movie incoming.
Book or a tedious movie that this review was?
They loved the film. They hated the book.
The film, hated the book.
Book good. Book bad, film good.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think, should we stop for Sean's benefit of editing with no internet?
Yeah. It's been great to hang out with you tonight, Steve. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, and I'm glad you're enjoying the book as well.
Yeah.
Well, hope it flies because it deserves to.
Thank you very much.
And we'll hopefully see you at a festival next year.
Yeah, it'd be great when we can get out and actually live.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Another T-shirt phrase. There we go.
And we can all have more skin in the game. Maybe that's
Yes.
probably overusing that phrase now, aren't they?
Yeah, we've not had episode names, but I feel like maybe we should start, and this one should be called
Skin in the Game.
I'm thinking maybe my next book should be called that, actually.
Yeah. There we go. 1 hour, 9 minutes into the record, we got the exclusive.
Yeah, there's the exclusive. I've got a working title.
Yes. Although it does sound a little bit like a JCVD, straight to DVD, straight to video movie from 1997 or something.
Who knows? We'll see.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
See you later.
Yeah. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye.